The seat no one wanted. The sun was just beginning to rise over the small town of Redwood Hills. Long, golden rays stretched across the school's parking lot like fingers searching for something lost. The air buzzed with excitement and nerves. It was graduation day at Redwood Hills High School, and the school grounds were alive with laughter, clicking cameras, proud families, and the rustle of black gowns. In the middle of it all stood a tall, quiet man named Rakesh. His shoulders were slightly slouched. His hair was graying at the sides, and he clutched a small, neatly wrapped gift in his hand. It was a watch, not an expensive one, but carefully chosen. Simple, elegant, just like the message inside it. For my son, may you always remember what time can build. Rakesh had worked the night shift again, 3 nights in a row. He barely had time to go home and shower before making his way here, but it didn't matter. Nothing would keep him from watching his only son, Arjun. Rakesh was not from this town originally. He came from India over 20 years ago, and though he had degrees and dreams, life took different turns. He worked wherever he could, gas stations, small repair shops, even janitorial work at times. All so Arjun could have something better. Arjun was the top of his class. A brilliant student, kind, focused, respectful. Today was supposed to be the day everything came full circle, but something unexpected happened. As Rakesh walked to the front section of the field, the section reserved for parents of honor students, a volunteer in a red polo shirt stepped in front of him. "Sir, that area is for family," she said, smiling tightly. "Yes," Rakesh replied, still holding the watch. "I am Arjun's father. He's valedictorian." The woman looked him up and down, his worn-out shoes, his tired eyes, his thick accent. "I'm sorry, but we're full up front," she said. "But the row still has seats," Rakesh said gently, pointing down. A man in a suit walked over. "Is there a problem?" "He's trying to sit in the reserved section," the woman explained. "I'm on the list," Rakesh said, trying to stay calm. "My name is Rakesh Kumar. My son is Arjun Kumar." The man glanced at the clipboard, flipped a few pages, then shook his head. "Don't see you here." "But Sir," the man said firmly, "you'll need to move to the general seating area." A few people turned to look. Some whispered, some frowned. Some okay. Okay. Yes. Stood there, confused, embarrassed. He didn't want to make a scene. He didn't want to ruin Arjun's day. So, slowly, he nodded and walked away. He found a seat far in the back, behind a large pole that blocked most of the stage. He sat quietly, trying to smile, even as tears threatened to form. The ceremony began. The school principal gave a long speech. Then came the awards. Then the announcement of the valedictorian. And now, the principal said, "Please welcome our valedictorian, Arjun Kumar." Applause erupted. People stood. Cameras flashed. Arjun walked up, confidently, his black gown swaying behind him, his head held high. But his eyes scanned the crowd. He didn't see his father in the front row. His smile faltered. He kept searching. Then, finally, way in the back, he saw him, his father, alone. Behind the pole, Arjun's heart dropped. He took a deep breath and began his speech. "I want to talk about something different today," he said. "Not grades, not college, not awards. I want to talk about sacrifices." The crowd quieted. "My father is sitting way in the back today, but he deserves to be in the front row." More than anyone, people turned to look. Some squinted. Others whispered. He worked nights, slept on buses, missed meals. All so I could be here. His voice trembled. But someone thought he didn't belong in the front. Someone looked at his clothes, his face, and decided he wasn't the kind to sit with the rest. Silence. A teacher near the stage shifted uncomfortably. The woman in the red polo looked down at her feet. "But here's the truth," Arjun continued. "He is the reason I'm here, the reason I never gave up, the reason I know what strength looks like." Then he did something no one expected. He stepped down from the stage. He walked past the rows of families, past the stunned volunteers, past the confused staff. He walked all the way to the back. He reached his father, held out his hand, and said, "This seat isn't good enough for you. Papa, come with me." The crowd didn't know what to do. Some clapped. Others stood in awkward silence. But Rakesh stood up, speechless. He had tears in his eyes as he followed his son. Arjun brought him to the stage. He sat him down in his own valedictorian seat. "Now," Arjun said, "I can finish my speech." People began to applaud, louder this time. Some even stood, not because of Arjun's grades, but because of his heart. And just when the applause started to fade, a tall man in a dark blue jacket stepped onto the field. He wore sunglasses and walked with quiet confidence. Some recognized him. Some couldn't believe their eyes. Sundar, Pichai, Google single quotes, SEO. He walked straight toward the stage. Somebody gasped. A camera dropped. Even the principal looked confused. Sundar stepped up aside. "Arjun, may I?" he asked. Softly, Arjun stepped aside. Sundar looked out at the crowd. Then he looked at Rakesh. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice calm but firm, "I didn't plan to speak today. I came here for a personal reason. I came to see an old friend." People whispered louder now. "Friend? Rakesh, Kumar and I went to the same college in India," Sundar continued. "He was one of the brightest minds I knew. Life took us in different directions, but his brilliance never left." He turned to Rakesh, and today I saw how that brilliance shaped something even greater. His son. Rakesh stared at Sundar in disbelief. It had been over 2 decades since they last spoke, and I heard what happened when he tried to take his seat today, Sundar said. "I want to say something about that." He looked around. "We all say we believe in equality, in respect, in judging people by their character. But those beliefs are tested in small moments, like when someone walks into a space and we decide they don't belong." There was no applause this time, just silence. "Rakesh belonged in the front row before I ever did," Sundar said quietly. "And today, I'm not just here to witness a graduation. I'm here to honor a friend who taught me what real dignity looks like." He took a step back, nodded to Rakesh, then to Arjun. Then he left the stage as quietly as he had come. The crowd sat stunned. No one had expected this, and no one knew what was coming next. Because outside the school gates, a black car was pulling up. Inside, it was someone else. Someone who had watched all of this unfold online just minutes earlier. And they were not happy. Asterisk. Whispers and watchers. Moment Sundar Pichai stepped off the stage. The air changed. It was like the whole school field had paused. Parents with phones still raised in mid-record. Students mid-clap. Teachers frozen in place. Everything felt suspended in time. All eyes were locked on the man who had just spoken, but no one quite knew what to do next. Sundar didn't linger. He nodded politely to a few people as he made his way back down the steps, not smiling, not speaking. He moved like someone with purpose, as if he had already seen everything he needed to see. As if he'd come for one reason only, and that reason had just been fulfilled. But the ripples he left behind were far from still. The principal, Mr. Gregory, cleared his throat and fumbled with his notes. He tried to resume the program, but his voice cracked under the weight of what had just happened. Thank you, Arjun, and thank you, Mr. Pichai, for your powerful remarks. Let us now continue with the diploma presentations." But the audience wasn't really listening. Even as the next names were called, heads turned. Eyes kept shifting toward the back where Rakesh sat, still in shock, still holding the gift in his lap, unopened, forgotten. He hadn't moved. He hadn't said a word, because the truth was, Rakesh had no idea what was happening. He had never imagined seeing Sundar again, let alone at a moment like this. They hadn't spoken in over 20 years. And yet, somehow, Sundar knew where to find him. knew about Arjun's graduation, and chose this exact day to appear and speak. Rakesh's hands trembled slightly as he looked down at the gift. The wrapping paper was creased now, the corners bent from where he had clutched it too tightly earlier. He placed it gently on his lap and stared at the stage, not really seeing, just thinking. Memories from decades ago began to rise to the surface, dusty and distant, but still sharp. Where it mattered, he remembered the college hostel room they had shared in Chennai, the small twin beds with thin mattresses, the late-night study sessions. Sundar had been the quiet one, always reading, always solving equations in his mind, even during breakfast. Rakesh, on the other hand, had been the dreamer, always talking about how technology would change lives, how one day they'd both be working on projects that mattered. And then life happened. Rakesh's father fell ill. He had to leave his postgraduate studies midway and return home. From there, the spiral began: debt, desperation, survival. He came to America thinking he could rebuild, but the path was not smooth. His degrees didn't carry weight here. He didn't have connections. He took whatever work he could find. He never told Sundar what happened. He didn't want pity. And honestly, he thought Sundar would forget him. But clearly, he hadn't. Back on the field, Sundar had now exited the area entirely. He slipped into a waiting black car that had been parked discreetly behind the school's maintenance building. The driver nodded silently and pulled away, but not. Far behind that car, another vehicle had just arrived. Sleek black-tinted windows, the kind that didn't belong in a small town like Redwood Hills. It parked smoothly at the curb, and a tall, imposing woman stepped out. She wore a navy blue power suit, gold earrings, and carried a phone in one hand like it was an extension of her will. Her name was Evelyn Ford, head of public relations for a certain prestigious tech institution. And more importantly, one of the board members of the school's fundraising committee. She had been watching everything via live stream, a broadcast the school had launched on social media so distant relatives could witness their loved ones. A graduate. She had tuned in expecting to hear a few speeches and maybe clap when her niece's name was called. But then she saw Sundar Pichai, and then she saw what the valedictorian had said. And then she saw that man, that tired-looking man, in the back, being called out in front of everyone. She was furious. Not at Sundar. Not at Arjun. But at what the situation now meant. This wasn't just a local event anymore. People had already started posting clips online. One tweet with a grainy video of Sundar's speech already had 12,000 likes and counting. Hashtags were starting to form. Hashtag front row father. Hashtag rakesh kumar. Hashtag respect matters. Evelyn stormed across the field toward the principal's podium. Gregory. She hissed as she reached the steps. "We need to talk, now." The principal blinked at her. "Miss Ford, can this wait until—" "No, it can't." She glanced at the still rolling cameras and lowered her voice. "You have no idea the level of damage control we're about to need." Meanwhile, Arjun had quietly returned to his seat, but his eyes kept drifting to his father. He could tell something wasn't right. Papa hadn't smiled. Not even once, even after all that had just happened. Even after Sundar's surprise, Rakesh looked troubled. And Arjun didn't understand why. Wasn't this supposed to be a victory? Hadn't they just proven something powerful? That no matter what others thought, they had worth. They had pride. They had support. But maybe that wasn't enough. Maybe. Rakesh didn't want to be rescued. Maybe the whole thing, being called out, being honored publicly, even if with the best intentions, had exposed something deeper. A sense of shame that had lived quietly in his heart for years. A belief that he had failed, that his life hadn't gone the way it should have, that he wasn't the man he once promised he would be. And now, in front of hundreds of people, he had been reminded of that past, not with cruelty, but with kindness that cut too close to the bone. After the ceremony ended, people began to rise and leave. There were hugs and tears and photos, as expected. But near the back, a small circle had formed around Rakesh. Strangers began to come up to him, a mother with her daughter, a teacher who looked embarrassed, an elderly man who tipped his hat. You raised a fine young man, one woman said softly. Thank you for your example, said another. Rakesh nodded politely, but said very little. His voice had abandoned him for the moment. And then a familiar voice cut through the crowd. Uncle Rakesh? He turned slowly. It was Maya. His late friend Raj's daughter. She had flown in from Chicago for the graduation and hadn't seen Rakesh in years. Her eyes were wide with admiration. I saw everything. You looked like a hero today. Rakesh tried to smile, but before he could respond, a sharp voice pierced the moment. Mr. Kumar? It was Evelyn Ford. The crowd shifted as she stepped forward, her heels clicking against the pavement like punctuation marks. I'm Evelyn Ford. With the school board, she said crisply. May I have a word with you? In private? Arjun stood up quickly. He's with me. Of course, she said, not looking at Arjun. This won't take long. Rakesh looked at his son. Arjun nodded, but his eyes were cautious. They walked. A few steps away, Evelyn didn't waste time. I'm here because this situation is gaining traction online, she said. And while we are grateful for your son's speech and Mr. Pichai's visit, we're also aware of how this reflects on the school. Rakesh said nothing. I want to make this clear, Evelyn continued. We are preparing a statement, something that expresses regret about what happened without assigning blame. It would be helpful if you refrained from giving interviews or posting anything for now. Rakesh blinked. Interviews? Yes, she said, glancing at her phone. We've already been contacted by 3 news outlets. A journalist from Silicon Valley Post is trying to confirm if you and Mr. Pichai were classmates. Another outlet is calling it the front row scandal. Rakesh let out a breath. This wasn't a scandal. I understand, she said, quickly, but that's not how the internet works. He shook his head slowly. This was about my son, not attention. Evelyn softened, just slightly. Look, Mr. Kumar, we don't want this to become a bigger mess. We're going to offer you a formal apology. And we'll also name you a community inspiration honoree at next month's awards banquet. It'll be good press. Good for the school. Good for everyone. Rakesh stared at her. A community honoree. Like a prize for being humiliated? He stepped back. No, thank you. Evelyn blinked. Excuse me? I don't need an award, Rakesh said, his voice steadier now. I need people to see others like me as human beings, not charity cases. Not exceptions, just people with worth. Evelyn didn't respond right away. Her face hardened. I hope you reconsider. I won't. And with that, he walked away, back to Arjun. Back to his seat. The day was almost over. The sun was beginning to dip low in the sky. Long shadows stretched across the field. Most families had left. The balloons had started to deflate, but one more moment was coming. One more twist. Because inside, that same black car Sundar had left in, a phone call was taking place. He wasn't headed to the airport just yet. He was headed somewhere else. Somewhere. He hadn't been in 20 years, and someone was waiting for him there. Someone who still remembered what Rakesh had. Someone who carried a promise, one that Sundar had made long ago. And now, after all this time, he was finally going to keep it. Asterisk, the promise that waited 20 years. Sun had dipped behind the hills, and Redwood High stood quiet, now emptied of its crowd. A few rappers blew across the field like forgotten memories, caught in the lazy breeze of early evening. The graduation banners still fluttered, but their moment had passed. What remained was something else, something quieter, heavier, and more personal than the celebration that had just taken place. Rakesh sat on a small bench near the school's exit, his hands folded in his lap, his son beside him. The gift he had brought, the wrapped watch, still sat unopened, its corners now more wrinkled than before. It felt almost symbolic, like time had tried to be celebrated but was turned away, just like him. Yet despite the quiet around them, his mind was not still. Arjun leaned forward, watching his father's face. Papa, he said softly, are you okay? Rakesh didn't answer right away. He looked out at the parking lot, where families had once been hugging and celebrating, but had now mostly driven off to dinner parties, backyards, and fancy restaurants. I should have fought harder, Rakesh said at last, his voice low, when they told me to move. I should have said no. Arjun frowned. You did nothing wrong. They judged you because of how you looked. Yes, Rakesh said, still staring forward. But I've spent years avoiding moments like that. Being small, invisible, working in the background so you wouldn't have to. He turned now, finally meeting his son's eyes. I didn't want to be seen, Arjun. Not like that. And when you pulled me up, and when Sundar spoke, it was kind. It was powerful. But I felt naked. I felt like everyone saw how far I'd fallen. Arjun shook his head, his voice thick. Papa, no. They saw strength. They saw someone who gave everything for his son. Rakesh nodded slowly. He wasn't arguing. But he wasn't healed either. Wounds like his didn't close in. They took time and understanding. And sometimes they needed old doors to be opened. Just then, a sleek black car turned the corner and pulled up quietly near the school gate. The door opened, and Sundar stepped out again. He wasn't wearing sunglasses now. His jacket was gone. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, and he looked like a man less concerned with image and more focused on mission. He approached them without fanfare. Just calm steps on the concrete, soft and steady. Rakesh stood. Arjun stood beside him, surprised. You came back? Rakesh asked. Sundar nodded. I never left far. For a moment, nothing was said. The years between them felt like a wall. So much unspoken. So much to repair. Finally, Sundar broke the silence. I owe you something, Rakesh. Rakesh frowned. Me? No. You owe me nothing. I do, Sundar said. You see, when you left college, you didn't tell anyone. One day you were there, and the next you were gone. We thought you got a better opportunity. Then I heard later that your father was sick, that your family needed help. Rakesh nodded. There wasn't time to explain, Sundar continued. After you left, I found your notebook in our room. The one where you wrote ideas about education, about making tech accessible for poor families, about bringing learning tools to rural kids. I remember thinking, this man is going to change the world. Rakesh's eyes widened slightly. He hadn't thought anyone remembered that notebook. I carried it with me for years, Sundar said, smiling softly, until I started my own journey. And every time I hit a wall, every time I thought about quitting, I remembered you. Your ideas, your fire. You were my compass, Rakesh. Not the other way around. Rakesh looked away, overwhelmed. Sundar stepped closer. When I made it to Google, he said, when I began leading teams, those old ideas came back to me. Not in exact form, but the heart of them. Making information free. Making tools for everyone. I realized something, so much of what I became was built on the spark you left behind. He reached into his pocket now, pulled out a folded piece of paper, old, worn, carefully preserved. He handed it to Rakes. Unfolded it slowly. It was a page from that old notebook, his handwriting. A sketch of a mobile device with simple educational apps, designed for children in slums who had no teachers. His throat tightened. You kept this? He whispered. I built from this. Sundar said, the silence that followed wasn't empty. It was sacred. The kind of silence that fills a space with memory and recognition and healing. Then Sundar said, something else. I need to show you something. He gestured to the car. Arjun looked at his father, unsure. But Rakesh nodded. They followed Sundar and got into the car. The drive was quiet at first, but the city slowly gave way to open space. And after 30 minutes, they arrived at a large building, sleek, modern, with big windows and solar panels on the roof. A clean sign outside read, The Kumar Initiative for Future Thinkers. Arjun gasped. Rakes stared. What is this? He asked, barely above a whisper. Sundar stepped out of the car and waited for them to follow. This, he said, is a dream we shared, one that I finally had the means to build. It's a center for underserved kids, for immigrant families, for anyone who never thought they had a place in tech, in science, in innovation. They walked inside bright rooms filled with computers, labs, bookshelves, classrooms with interactive walls. Kids of all backgrounds working side by side. Rakes couldn't believe what he was seeing. But why name it after me? He asked. Sundar looked at him with gentle seriousness. Because it wouldn't exist without you. Rakesh turned slowly in the space, taking it all in. He ran his fingers across a table where kids had written messages of hope in chalk. I want to be an engineer. I want to help my village. I want to build things. The tears came now, not of pain, but of release. Decades of struggle, of invisible effort, of small victories and silent heartbreaks. All of it now. Recognized, honored, transformed. I thought my story was over, Rakesh said, voice trembling. Sundar shook his head. It's just beginning. Arjun stood off to the side, watching his father in awe. He had always known his dad was strong, but now he was beginning to understand just how deep that strength ran. It wasn't just in the sacrifices he made. It was in the dreams he once held, and how those dreams had quietly shaped the world without anyone knowing. Just then, a small girl tugged at Rakesh's sleeve. Are you Mr. Kumar? She asked. He nodded slowly. She smiled. Thank you for building this place. I want to be like you. He knelt, his voice still shaky. No, Beta, you'll be better. The moment held. Tender and real. But outside the walls of the center, something else was brewing, because while the world was beginning to hear of Rakesh Kumar through social media, through stories, through whispers of the mysterious graduation speech and Sundar's surprise visit, there were those who saw all of it as a disruption. People who had long benefited from keeping voices like Rakesh's quiet, and they were about to make their move. Then. Ones who wanted silent Seth, lights in the center glowed warmly into the night, casting soft halos on the floor tiles and walls. It was late, but inside the Kumar Initiative for Future Thinkers, something timeless was happening. The sound of laughter, the quiet rustle of turning book pages. Young voices asking questions like, what if I tried this? Or, do you think this could work? Hope lived here now. And that hope had a name, Rakesh Kumar, but even hope has its shadows. Not far from the center. Inside a dark paneled office with frosted glass and expensive chairs, a group of sharply dressed individuals sat around a conference table. The room was sleek, all steel and silence. Not one decoration hinted at joy. The only thing that filled the space was tension. At the head of the table sat Thomas Braden. He was the chairman of the Redwood Hills Private Education Board, a man known for his control over school funding, real estate zoning, and community development initiatives. To many, he was a polished philanthropist. To those who worked under him, he was something else, calculated, ruthless, and allergic to disruption. This is becoming a problem, he said coldly, sliding his phone. Across the table, on the screen was a clip of the graduation. Not the official school video. No, this one was more raw, taken from a student's phone. Arjun pulling his father to the front. Sundar Pichai speaking. The crowd rising in awkward, stunned applause. The video had gone viral. Over 2 million. Views in less than 12 hours. We were supposed to be promoting our excellence in education, Thomas continued. Not trending because of the janitor who got mistaken for a parent. A woman at the far end of the table, Eloise Carter, director of elite student placements, cleared her throat. He's not a janitor anymore. People are saying he's some kind of visionary, and with Sundar Pichai's comments, the narrative is shifting. That's exactly what worries me, Thomas said, leaning back. It's getting out of control. He hasn't said anything publicly. Another board member offered. He refused interviews. For now, Thomas muttered, but men like that don't stay quiet. Not when they finally taste attention. He paused, then looked up, eyes narrowed. We need to discredit this. Not violently. Subtly, quietly, before it spirals. There was silence. Then Eloise leaned forward. He has a son, doesn't he? The valedictorian? Yes. Arjun Kumar, said Thomas. Accepted into Stanford on a full scholarship. Then that's where we start. The implication was clear. They wouldn't attack Rakesh head-on. They'd pressure his son. And they knew exactly how. Meanwhile, back at the initiative center, Rakesh and Arjun were touring the upper levels. Sundar had left for a meeting, promising to return in the morning. But for now, father and son walked through the bright, open hallways lined with inspirational quotes, technology stations, and photos of young inventors from across the globe. I still can't believe he built this, Arjun said, awestruck. And named it after you. Rakesh didn't respond right away. He ran his fingers along the wall, where framed pages from his old notebook were mounted under glass. His past, now preserved like museum art. It didn't feel real. But it was he didn't just build this, Rakesh said quietly. He remembered. Arjun turned to him. What do you mean? Rakesh's eyes misted. We made a promise back then. Sundar and I. We said if even one of us ever made it, we'd lift the other. We said we wouldn't let the world forget where we came from. He looked down at his hands. I thought he forgot. But he didn't? Arjun swallowed the lump in his throat. He didn't just lift you, Papa. He reminded the world what you're made of. Just then, Rakesh's phone buzzed. Email. Subject. Urgent. Review of Arjun. Kumar scholarship eligibility. Frown. Opened it. His hands TENSED. The message was from the Stanford Review Board. It said that based on recent concerns regarding potential misrepresentation of academic support systems, Arjun's full scholarship package was now under secondary review. They were requesting immediate documentation to verify the origins of his applications and suggesting a temporary academic hold until the matter was resolved. Rakesh handed the phone to Arjun. Arjun read it twice, his face drained of color. What does this mean? He asked. It means, Rakesh said slowly, someone is trying to punish you to reach me. They sat in silence. The joy of the day dissolved. Replaced by something heavier. This doesn't make sense. Arjun said, I earned that scholarship. Every letter, every paper, every exam. Rakesh nodded. I know. But power doesn't always play fair. Arjun looked up, eyes burning. What do we do? Rakesh stood slowly, his face no longer confused or ashamed. It was calm. Resolved. We fight. Thought we do it right. He walked over to the window, looked out at the rows of children inside the center, all laughing, learning, hopeful. We don't hide anymore, he said. And we don't let them define our worth. Arjun stepped beside him. Then let's show them who we are. Back at Thomas Braden's office, the news was already spreading. Rumors, whispers. Arjun's scholarship might be revoked. Questions about his father's influence. Was Sundar Pichai favoring an old friend? They had planted just enough seeds. But what they hadn't counted on was the internet, because one of the students who had filmed the graduation had uploaded the full uncut video, including the conversation between Arjun and the crowd. And Sundar's speech, word for word. A popular tech blogger picked it up. Then a journalist from India. Then a mother's blog with millions of followers reposted it, saying, every immigrant parent deserves this kind of moment. Within hours, people across the world began defending Arjun, and raksa.has grew. Donations poured in for the center. And then a breaking post from Sundar Pichai's own verified account. Rakesh Kumar is the reason I'm here. If you're questioning his son's merit, then you're questioning every silent sacrifice that built our future. We must be better. It was shared over 200,000 times in 2 hours. Braden's team watched helplessly as the tide shifted. Their quiet campaign had backfired. Badly. The next morning, Rakesh stood before a group of students at the center. News cameras had shown up. He didn't want to speak at first. But Arjun told him, "This is your story now, not theirs." So he stood, took the mic. And said simply, asterisk. For years, I thought silence was strength, that working quietly meant dignity. But now I know silence can also be mistaken for shame. He looked around at the young faces. Your parents, like me, may never sit in front rows. They may clean buildings, drive buses, fix machines, but their work is sacred. He paused, and when you rise, rise with them, not above them. The crowd erupted. Even the reporters stood to applaud. And in that moment, Rakesh Kumar, the man who once hid in the back row, stood front and center, not because he demanded it, but because the world finally saw him. And yet, just when everything seemed whole, a letter arrived. From India. Unsigned. Handwritten. With 4 words, "You still owe me." Rakesh read it once. Then again. His hands began to shake. Because he knew exactly who had sent it, and he had hoped they'd never resurface. Asterisk. The debt that never vanished. The morning sun filtered through the long glass windows of the initiative center, casting warm shadows across the polished floors and quiet meeting rooms. Birds chirped gently outside. To anyone walking past, it looked like a perfect, peaceful day. The kind of day that felt earned after struggle. But inside Rakesh Kumar's office, the air was anything but calm. He held the letter in both hands. The envelope was thin, worn, the handwriting jagged, almost angry. The ink smudged in places, as if whoever had written it had pressed too hard, or trembled while doing so. Those 4 words echoed inside him. "You still owe me." Rakesh sat down slowly, his knees weak, his breath shallow. Memories he had kept locked away for decades now stirred, crawling from the corners of his mind like shadows waking from sleep. Thought he had left it behind. But the past always finds a way, especially when it was never really finished. He opened the desk drawer and pulled out an old leather-bound notebook. It was cracked at the spine and smelled faintly of dust and ink. Inside were scribbled pages from long ago, not from college, but from the years just after, when he was new in America, when things were hardest, when he was desperate. He flipped to a page marked with a faded paperclip. There it was. A name. Deepak at Pichai. Rakesh hadn't spoken that name out loud in years. Not since the night everything fell apart. Deepak had been an acquaintance from their old hometown in India. Not quite a friend. More like someone who appeared when opportunity knocked, and then stayed longer than welcome. When Rakesh had first arrived in America, young and hopeful, he'd lived with 3 other immigrants in a cramped basement apartment near Queens. He was applying for jobs, sending resumes, working odd shifts at grocery stores and delivery gigs. Every dollar mattered. Deepak showed up one evening. Uninvited. Said he knew Rakesh's uncle. Said he just needed a place to crash for a week. That week turned into a month. And then Deepak made an offer. "I know someone," he had said. "Someone who can get you papers. Faster. Clean. No more waiting. No more hiding." Rakesh was confused. "My visa's still good." Deepak smiled. "But your work permit? Your future?" "This guy knows people. He's helped others. All you have to do is vouch for me." Rakesh hesitated. It didn't feel right, but back then, fear ruled him. Fear of being stuck. Of wasting his potential. And most of all, of letting his family down. So he agreed. He signed a letter saying Deepak was his co-tenant. He put his name on an apartment lease Deepak had no intention of paying. He even gave a reference. Fake. That said Deepak worked for him in a made-up startup. Nothing illegal. Deepak promised just shortcuts. But shortcuts always come with cliffs. 6 months later, Deepak vanished. Left behind unpaid rent, forged documents, and a trail of suspicion. Rakesh was questioned. He lost the job he'd just gotten. His visa renewal was delayed. He had to start over. From the bottom, he never spoke to Deepak again, never told anyone. Not Sundar though, not even his wife, who had passed away 5 years ago, still thinking their hardships were just part of the immigrant journey. Now, after all these years, after finally rising, finally being seen, Deepak had resurfaced, and he wanted something. Rakesh stared at the letter, heart pounding. What did Deepak want now? Money? A favor? Silence? Before he could think further, a knock came at the door. It was Maya, his old friend Raj's daughter, who now volunteered part-time at the center. Uncle, she said softly, someone's here asking for you. He said you'd know him? Didn't give a name. Rakesh's throat tightened. Where is he? Waiting by the garden wall, outside the west wing. Rakesh stood. Each step toward that garden felt heavier than the last. His mind raced. The years of struggle, the fear, the shame, it all came rushing back with every footfall. When he turned the corner, he saw him. Deepak Mihra, older, heavier, hair thinner, but eyes still sharp, calculating. He wore an expensive coat, a designer watch, and the grin of a man who thought he still had leverage. You look good. Rakesh, he said, arms open like an old friend. Famous now, eh? Rakesh didn't speak, just looked at him, measured him. You got my letter? Deepak asked. Rakes nodded slowly. Why now? Deepak shrugged. I saw your face online. Saw the speeches, the praise. Sundar mentioning your name on Twitter. Figured, maybe it's time we reconnected. Rakesh's jaw clenched. What do you want? Deepak didn't flinch. Nothing much. Just a foot in the door. A consulting role, maybe. Short term. High pay. You've got that center now. And donors too. I have experience with nonprofits. Strategy. Branding. Rakesh let out a quiet, bitter laugh. Strategy? Branding? You mean like lying? Deepak's grin faded. Careful, Rakesh, he said, his tone shifting. You wouldn't want old stories to come out. You wouldn't want someone digging into the past. Is that a threat? It's a reminder, Deepak said. You and I, we're tied together. If I go down, I might just take you with me. Rakesh stepped closer, not afraid now. Then do it, he said. Tell the world. Tell them I was once scared. Stupid. Tell them I made mistakes to survive. I've already paid the price, but what you haven't realized is I don't fear shame anymore. Deepak blinked. Rake, each single quotes as voice was steady, sharp. You want a job? Earn one. Submit your resume like everyone else. Or better yet, build your own center. Do your own good. But don't expect a handout from a man you betrayed. Deepak's mouth twisted. So that's it? You think you're untouchable now? No, Rakesh said. I just know who I am. He turned and walked away. Deepak didn't follow. The next day, news broke. Someone had leaked documents alleging that Rakesh once signed false records tied to a visa application 2 decades ago. Anonymous sources. No proof. Just whispers. But in today's world, whispers become headlines. Was the father of the internet's latest hero hiding a dark past? Old shadows. Kumar's alleged past surfaces amid viral fame. Comment sections exploded. Supporters clashed with critics. And in the center of the storm, Rakesh sat in silence, hands folded. Sundar called. I'll put our legal team on it, he said. You don't have to say a word. But Rakesh shook his head. No, he said. I do. This time, I will. He held a press conference 2 days later. Just him. No legal team. No suit. No stage. Just a folding chair on the steps of the Initiative Center, surrounded by curious reporters and cameras. And he told the truth about Deepak. About the choices he made. About the consequences that shaped the last 20 years of his life. He didn't cry. He didn't beg. He simply told his story. And then he ended with this. I am not proud of what I did, but I am proud of who I became in spite of it. And if you believe people can change, then I ask only this. Judge me not by the papers I once signed, but by the lives I now live. There was silence, then someone began clapping. Then another. Then all of them. And that night, The world responded, not with anger, but with grace, because sometimes the most powerful thing a person can do is tell the truth. But just as Rakesh began to breathe again, Maya ran into his office holding her phone. "You need to see this," she said. It was a new message, not from Deepak, but from someone unexpected. An elite prep school had revoked their funding for the center, claiming public controversy and ethical misalignment, and in their place, a new name appeared on the board of donors. Thomas Braden, the very man who tried to destroy them, was now trying to buy them. The seat that changed everything that had fallen over Redwood Hills. And the town was unusually quiet, as if holding its breath. Inside the Kumar Initiative for Future Thinkers, the once vibrant halls now hummed with low, anxious murmurs. Not from children, they had all gone home for the day, but from staff, volunteers, and community members who had gathered after reading the news. The headline had shaken them. Billionaire education mogul Thomas Braden joins donor list of troubled nonprofit. It didn't sound like support, it sounded like ownership. The same man who had been behind the Whisper campaign, who had tried to bury Arjun's scholarship and pressure Rakesh into silence, was now listed as one of their major backers, not because he believed in the cause, but because he believed in control. Rakesh stood at the tall glass window of his office, looking out over the city lights, his reflection faint in the glass. The letter from the elite prep school lay open on his desk, their cold, formal withdrawal of funding spelling out their fear of brand damage due to recent controversy. And in its place, Thomas's name, written in bold letters on the updated donor proposal. A gift that felt more like a chain. Arjun entered the room quietly. "They think they can just erase what happened," he said. "Rewrite the story.